was linking to Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up with a link that says, "This is Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up."
I guess it has to come around full circle at some point.
I tagged it as meme mutation. I will never get tired of watching memes mutate.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. No, it's so awesome. Well, when they like mutate and shift and stuff. Oh, what did I see?
Yeah, that was.
I saw something. I'm trying to remember what it was real quick. Yesterday. Oh crap! I don't remember what it was. It was something about. I don't remember. Never mind. There was like a meme that was like that had kind of like shifted onto something else, but I don't remember exactly what it was, and I don't want to try to explain it right now when we have other things to talk about. Oh, if I'm in the wrong book.
Yeah.
Pride and Prejudice, 79%.
I know, we're like 80% done with this book.
We are like 80%. Let's see, notes. Here we go. Oof. All damn chapters. Oh, so all right, so here's something that I just started noticing in the last few chapters. Like I started highlighting it a little bit in chapter 46 that I didn't realize I don't think I noticed in chapters before about 44 is that they the so the letters from Elizabeth, or from Jane that both come in chapter 46. In one of them, she says, "Our poor mother is sadly grieved," and then immediately thereafter says, "My father bears it better." And then I just started noticing,
like the whole of 47, 48, 49, like they're continually being like, "Where is my uncle?
Yeah.
How is my mother?" And I'm like,
it's also your uncle and your
right?
mother. Like, how is our mother? Like, and I honestly don't know why they're doing that. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, no, it seems really weird to me. And I don't, because it bothered me every time through all 3 chapters.
Yep, I noticed it every single time. So
and I don't know.
I had hoped that you had read somewhere about something like that with English. Let's see.
No, I did. So if I type "my mother" into Google, Google suggests "my mother the car," "my mother is a fish." Jane Austen. Jane Austen's Guide to Alzheimer's.
What?
Don't know. I'm not finding. No, I was prepared to talk about what it means to have run off to Scotland with Wickham.
Oh, well, that sounds interesting, and it sounds like it would be more productive than me sitting here on a live YouTube channel, on a live YouTube broadcast, trying to type in my versus our in English grammar and finding things that's like my versus mine, our versus ours. Like, I'm like, I don't
like. That's not what I'm after.
I want. I literally want why on earth you might use my when you could appropriately use our.
And it seems a little appropriative. Like,
Right.
I was just watching a SciShow on lying and how we detect it, and the example sentence he used was, um, "Believe me, I was not the one who farted and cleared out that theater." And
Mm-hmm.
one of the that tells us, he's like, when I say that sentence, you absolutely do not believe me. You are convinced that it was me who cleared out that theater. And one of the things that we key off of is, most of the time telling that story, you would say, and they had to evacuate the theater. When you say that theater, you're distancing yourself from the thing that you are ashamed of.
Hmm.
And so
Interesting.
this feels like kind of the opposite of appropriating, like maybe trying to take a burden from each other, like, don't worry about it, it's my mother, I'll deal with it. But I don't know.
Hmm. That's interesting. That's
I
very,
don't
very
know.
interesting. Well, and that would be even more interesting for like because she said our poor mother and then my father. And it's sort of
Right.
like she's like, "Look, I'm claiming my father, but we have to share, mom."
that that seems legit. Anyway, in the middle of the 18th century, so right around when this book was being written, um, the England changed the marriage laws to say that if you were younger than 21, then you had to have parental consent to get married, and you had to get married in a church. But
Huh.
Scotland did not adopt that change, and in Scotland, you had to be over 16 and you could get married basically in a civil ceremony with both of you saying, I wish to be married to this person, and two witnesses. And so if you took the main road out of London and headed up to Scotland, the first village you would come to on the Scottish side was Gretna Green. And the first building you would come to in Gretna Green was the blacksmith shop. And you would basically like jump out of the carriage, be like, all right, we're getting married here. And the blacksmith and his assistant would provide the two witnesses, and you guys would do. And then by the time your angry father showed up and was like, you can't do it, it's like, too late, we're married. what
Hmm.
what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. um and then the blacksmith would like bring his hammer down on the anvil, and that was kind of the equivalent of wedding bells. It was the announcement of a shotgun wedding in Gretna Green.
Oh my.
But it's basically
That's
where you went to
cool.
get married to someone that you knew for a fact your father would not give you permission to marry.
That's that is funny. So in Lizzie Bennett Diaries, when they sent them off to Vegas, that was actually really close to the same kind of place.
It really was.
That's where people go to elope. Which I
Yeah.
mean, there was never any intention that they were going there to elope, but in that show, but
Well, and I was noticing with, I mean, hotbed of scandal and intrigue, with many daughters from respectable families choosing to flee here to marry a scoundrel. That's just what it means to get married in Scotland at this point in time.
nice.
I
That's
don't remember where
hilarious.
it was, but basically, then they find out that even worse than running off to Vegas to get married is running off to Vegas not to get married.
Right.
Like, they're living in London together, not married, and that's like the worst thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that I don't remember if I highlighted it. That they were relieved to find out that at least Lydia had intended to get married when they left.
Yeah.
But could really believe that she might end up being persuaded not to. And what interested me was how far they went, how many. There it is. I finally found it.
Okay.
All astonishment that Wickham should marry a girl whom it was impossible he could marry for money, and how Lydia could ever have attached him, had appeared incomprehensible. But now it was all too natural. For such an attachment as this she might have sufficient charms, and although she did not suppose Lydia to be deliberately engaging in an elopement without the intention of marriage, she had no difficulty in believing that neither her virtue nor her understanding would preserve her from falling an easy prey.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, like, how we have 3 chapters here that basically revolve around the possibility that Lydia and Mr. Wickham might have sex. And how many different ways we find of expressing our concern about the horribleness of this without ever once using the word sex.
Yeah. That's no, you're pretty much you're right. That well, she might have sex without being married.
Right.
Right. And like there's even gosh, I'm sure I highlighted it somewhere. Talking about I think Kitty says father's gone. Um Come on. There's so many chapters that we read, and I don't have. It's not like a book I can just flip through. It takes a while to refresh the pages.
Yes. Now that is an interesting downside of ebooks. That I don't notice much that the time it takes to refresh the page when I'm just trying to turn the page to read.
Mm-hmm.
That I think is about the same amount of time as it takes me to turn a page. But the ability to grab like 5 pages and turn them all at once,
yeah,
makes a big difference when I'm trying to skim.
Mm-hmm. I don't think I highlighted, I guess, but it was before Mr. Bennett comes back, and they're talking about how like it's the worst thing in the world for a woman to be caught up in a situation like this.
Yes, I think it was Mary, actually.
Okay. Is that one of her sisters? I think yes.
Yeah, Mary's the self-righteous,
Right.
who likes to think herself educated but has no ability to think critically.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I definitely noticed, like, somehow it's worse for Lydia to have done this than for Wickham to have done this.
Right. I like how they also kind of insinuate that Elizabeth, like, she never directly says it, but she kind of just like there's this insinuation that pretty much after this, there's no way that she could possibly be with Darcy. Like a family so deranged, a father absent, a mother incapable of exertion and requiring constant attendance. Like it's just she's just like my family is messed up beyond reparation. Like there's no possible way.
Which it well, and the thing is, unhappy as the event must be for Lydia, we may draw from it this useful lesson: that loss of virtue in a female is irretrievable, that one false step involves her in endless ruin, that her reputation is no less brittle than it is beautiful, and that she cannot be too much guarded in her behavior towards the undeserving of the other sex.
Yeah.
and and it's like this whole thing, like the entire their reputation in the town and their reputation in um in London and their ability to function as a respectable family is all just disappeared because Lydia might have had sex with Mr. Wickham without being married.
Right.
It's like,
well, and she certainly can't find someone else.
Right. And like, I get that we have no ability other than marriage to ensure that children are cared for in this current system, right? We don't have birth control and whatever, but at the same time, it seems to me like if we were a little more relaxed about who does what to whose genitals, it would save everyone a lot of anguish.
Yeah. No, if you had a society that was literally like it took a village to raise a child, partly because I mean you only know half of who the child's like
Right.
parentage is, so literally everybody takes care of it because it might be related.
Right.
Like that would be you would certainly have a society in which everybody shared shared responsibility more, and people didn't sit back and be like, that was your bad, had nothing to do with me, so
Right.
I don't have to do anything to fix this situation.
So much judgment. I remember when they get the letter from Mr. Collins that is allegedly offering sympathy, but is in point of fact just being like, just so you know, everybody here knows. We all know. We're talking about it.
Yeah.
We're judging you.
Oh gosh, yeah. No, he said one of the things he said, I was just like, yeah, no, I pretty much cringe every time Mr. Collins shows up.
My Kindle got its software updated, and now the formatting's wonky, and it makes me angry. And so it doesn't note the chapters right, and it doesn't really distinguish between, like, I don't get the section breaks. And I was noticing as a result of being like, oh, it's in that letter. And then I'm like, well, this is a letter. There's a lot of letters in this chapter.
Yeah. I did a lot of noticing grammar stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like well, and syntax, I guess, like in whatever chapter I'm looking at right now, it's like they all exclaimed against such terrific ideas. And Mr. Gardner, blah blah blah, told her he meant to be in London the very next day. I'm like, terrific ideas. Like that's not what that word means today. Like they're meaning
Right.
like terrifying ideas, not terrific. Yes. Like,
so yeah, archaic, the definition is causing terror.
Yeah. And I'm like, that is,
but
I kind of wish that now we use terrifying.
Yeah.
And then
and I mean, a lot of things have made that transition.
Yeah.
Awful was I guess, the inverse.
Gosh dang it. I keep hitting the wrong button. Oh, I keep hitting the beginning button when I'm trying to hit the notes tab.
Ah.
Let's see.
And while it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife, is a great line. It's only
Right.
so many times you can read it.
Yeah. And then where was it? It was, oh yes, back in chapter 46, the she read the letter, and then it read as follows, colon, it had been written a day later than the conclusion of the first. Talking about the second letter, and I'm like, there's a colon followed by
Colon right
more,
there.
followed by something that the colon is not actually indicating.
Pointing to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the thing the colon is pointing to is below that. And I'm just like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Like, because that usage of a colon would probably get you a D in English class.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if it was legitimate or if usage has changed or if, because I've never noticed it. And maybe most people by the time they, yeah, it's right there. There's a colon. That's interesting. But, by the time you get to here, you're so involved with the story, you don't pay attention to that kind of thing. So, just nobody's ever noticed it.
Yeah. Well, and then I highlighted what Elizabeth said to Mr. Darcy because she was just like having a nice chit chat with Mr. Darcy, and then she gets the
Mm-hmm.
letter and reads it. Or no, she reads the letter, and then Mr. Darcy shows up, and she's just like, "I beg your pardon, but I must leave you. I must find Mr. Gardner this moment on business that cannot be delayed. I have not an instant to lose." And he's like, "Good God, what is the matter?"
Right. And then he's like, okay, I mean, let me help you.
Right. Yeah, yeah. But let me go after, or someone else go after Mr. Gardner, please. Yeah.
But yeah, what I highlighted was with more feeling than politeness.
Yeah. No, it was yeah, that was very I thought that was kind of interesting that it was like so when someone is that direct, you're like, "Whoa, what the hell's going on?" Like
Right.
you're not playing the polite game like we're supposed to. What's happened?
Well, and I think Darcy's a little more comfortable with that. Um,
Yeah. Oh no, for sure. Like I know that like I'm like like I'm like squeamish about things, social interactions, like doing certain tasks or whatever. Like I have anxiety about doing stuff or whatever until it absolutely needs to get done, and then I'm just like, let's go. We got to get this done. Let's do it.
right, we're doing this thing.
Like right up until it
And
is
really,
absolutely important to get it done, I'm like, oh, I don't know. I just don't feel it. Like I'm not like into this. Like I'm just it's gonna feel weird, like I'm uncomfortable with it, like I just don't want to do it. And then it's like, no, we have to get this done. All right, cool, doing it. Go.
and I feel like some of that is like the moment where it becomes comfortable for me is the moment at which everyone else acknowledges that the getting it done is so important and so urgent that we are going to drop the politeness thing and do whatever it takes to get the communication done to get it done.
Hmm.
Because there's always, I was writing, someone on Tumblr was asking about um, the autistic being nonverbal thing. And I was kind of laying out my spectrum from like, no, I actually can't talk at all, through like, I feel like I'm talking normally, but people are looking at me funny, so I conclude that I'm not. And then all the way up to like fully functional. But I was listing out like everything that has to be done for me to be able to be quote unquote verbal, to be a normal communicative member of society. Like I have to identify what my feelings are, identify what, if anything, should be done about them, determine what I wish to communicate, plan out the best way to express that so that it will be communicated, and then actually form the words in a in the tone of voice that conveys actually what I mean, and not like, not too aggressive and not too diffident, but the an appropriate tone of voice. And I'm listing all this stuff out, and I'm like, no wonder I don't like talking to people. And if we can drop from that to, I have to go find my uncle right now, I cannot be delayed,
Mm-hmm.
then right now, instead of work, the work being like all of this stuff to get stuff done, plus all of this stuff to like figure out how to communicate around all of the stuff, like, no, we're just doing the work to get stuff done. I can do that. It's this that that stresses me out and gives me so much anxiety, and I'm just like, oh, I don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
um when we reach the point where everyone agrees we can drop this, I don't mind doing the work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not the thing for me is like chores or something at home growing up was always like I don't mind generally actually doing it, but there was always like I always have like this constant terror around the idea of what are the people in my house going, how are they going to perceive me as doing this right now? Are they
Right.
going to be thinking that, oh, good, he's finally doing it? Or, oh gosh, he doesn't need to be doing that right now. I should be doing this. Or, oh, good, he's finally stepping up and taking responsibility instead of putting off doing the chores or whatever. And I'm just like, I hate that. I like that trying to think about what people think about me in doing certain things in certain places or like what message I'm sending by doing a thing then generally leads me to not do anything.
Right. Just done now.
Yeah, like it's like there have been several times like in high school like homework I didn't do homework not because I didn't think about doing homework, which was usually the case, but because I was sitting there looking at homework and I'm like I have not been doing homework and I just remembered that I have homework to do and I have time to do it and I feel like I could kind of do it, but I really don't want to deal with like mom being suddenly happy that I'm doing my homework on my own.
God, yes. Yes.
Like that was
Right.
that
It's
was
not the work I can't handle. It's the
It's the, oh my gosh,
and
thank
the
you so
same,
much for
like,
doing your homework. And I'm just like, no, don't
right,
freaking say that to me.
just leave me alone and I'll do it. But yes, absolutely. It's just the, oh my God, are you actually doing your homework? Oh my God, it's a change. It's a miracle. Call the Pope. I'm like, just fine. I won't do my homework.
Yeah.
That's my reward for it. Fine.
Well, and my mom was never so sarcastic about that. I don't think she was about things like that, but it felt probably about the same to me that I was like, it was
It's
like
still
there
a
wasn't the
call out.
resentment, but it's just calling it out that like they're like because in that, oh, I'm glad to see you're doing your homework, if that, even if that's all she said and she was actually glad to see that I was doing my homework and she thought she was trying to reinforce me, what it was, all it did to me was call out that I generally didn't do my homework and that she thought that I should have been.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas like I looking back on things like practicing music was one of the worst things for me, like one of the regular causes of stress because like I knew I should, but like even when I remembered that I should, I'm like I'm not going to because everyone in the house is going to hear me and know that I'm practicing, and like uh 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 and like mom had said, she's like, look, I don't care if it's good. I liked it. I enjoy listening to you practice, and I'm like, I'm not performing for you. I'm not ready to perform yet. It's not good yet,
Right.
and so like there's just all of this stress and like doing dishes and doing laundry and cleaning my room and like all of that stuff. I'm just like it's too much work to do it, not the actual doing of it, but like the interpretation and like managing expectation of like all the people around me if I
Yes.
did it
All the social pressure of doing it performatively.
right. Like the only times that I've ever been comfortable doing like chores and house cleaning and stuff is when I lived just with like like my older brother or my two brothers, and
Mm-hmm.
because like literally there was no expectation, And so that was like, oh, you're doing dishes, cool. Or oh, we
Great,
none of us have
right?
done dishes. Maybe I'll do them.
Right. At some point, you run out of dishes, and then someone has to do dishes, and
Right. Literally, I get terror at doing anything that a person might feel that they have to thank me for. Because if you feel after I've done something that you should say thank you, then that means that you feel like I've done you some favor or that I've acted outside of the way that I normally do or the way that you expect me to act, and that makes me anxious. Literally thanking me for doing something makes me anxious, except in situations that are like every day and like I hold the door for you and you're like thanks and that's it, you know. But like if I do the dishes or if I do the laundry or something and you're like, hey, thanks for doing that, and I'm like, maybe I won't do it
now
next
I'm
time.
uncomfortable, right? No
Maybe
more
I
of
won't
that.
do that next time. I don't like that.
We were watching an episode of The Mentalist, which Adams started watching, and I watch sometimes. And the character, like, because he's really good at reading people, he was just winning huge sums of money in Vegas. And, well, in Nevada, I guess it wasn't technically in Vegas. But anyway, um, so he won like $200,000 and then put it like in one of those roadside. He goes for a walk at like 6 in the morning and puts $100,000 worth of stuff into one of those like charity donation boxes. Like looks around to make sure no one can see him and puts the package in and slides it so that it gets dumped and makes sure nobody saw him and then walks away.
Mhm.
Um, and then he won another $300,000 and left it at the front desk of a hospital where he knew a character um, was with her mom who needed a new liver and she couldn't afford it. And so he just like left this briefcase with $300,000 and was like, sent, give this to this person, and walked away without leaving his name. And so like the audience knows that when the nurse comes in and is like, a really cute blonde guy left this for you at the front desk, and she opens it up and it's all this money. But he was like, he went to a lot of effort to ensure that nobody knew he gave away $500,000 over the
Mhm.
course of this episode.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely feel like that a lot. Like that's one of the things. Like at did I? Oh, I think the whole thing is gone. Maybe.
It's getting sketchy.
Yeah. Mm. Well, let's see if it
And
clears
it
up.
was
Maybe
doing so well for a little while.
it was doing really well for a while. Now it's definitely not. My computer is has been acting up lately. I'm worried that it's almost time to reset it. Um.
Um,
Yeah.
anyway, all of that seems relevant to the part of where, so uh, Darcy's like, oh my God, what's wrong? And then they send out the servant to get her aunt and uncle, and they sit there, and Darcy's like, I don't know what to do. I really want to help. Can I get you some wine? Can I call your maid? Like, what can I do to help? Um, and she tells him what's going on, and he, anyway, the one I highlighted was, I will not torment you with vain wishes, which may seem purposely to ask for your thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like, I feel like he's in that same boat. Like, I want to help, but I don't want to put us in an awkward situation where you're going to be like, oh my God, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really, I want to help, as long as you're not going to like make it awkward.
Mm-hmm. let's see, I highlighted the word dilatory. We're talking about Mr. Bennet. His family knew him to be, on all common occasions, a most negligent and dilatory correspondent.
Yeah, I had to look that one up.
Yeah.
It gives
Which makes me wonder if... It makes me wonder if the reason that Elizabeth is... like, the reason that she's able to fall in love with Darcy is because her dad's maybe a little bit... like, kind of similar.
They've both got some social awkwardness to them.
Yeah.
So I also highlighted this long paragraph. Like, it's kind of just right in the middle of the, and no attention is called to it, but it's almost like it's calling out the entire genre of rom-coms. Despite this being almost like the founding book of the rom-com genre, but it can't be because, anyway. So we've gone through this whole book, right? Elizabeth hates Mr. Darcy, and then they have their fight, and then they have the letter, and then she's like, now I don't know how I feel about Mr. Darcy, and then they meet Mr. Darcy, and she's like, I still really don't know how I feel about Mr. Darcy. And then, of course, we all know what the ending is.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, if gratitude and esteem are good foundations of affection, Elizabeth's change of sentiment will be neither improbable nor faulty. But if otherwise, if regard springing from such sources is unreasonable or unnatural, in comparison of what is so often described as arising on a first interview with its object, and even before two words have been exchanged, then nothing can be said in her defense except that she had given somewhat of a trial to the latter method in her partiality for Wickham, and its ill success might perhaps authorize her to seek the other, less interesting mode of attachment.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
She's seriously calling out the entire, yes, you know what? Elizabeth and Darcy didn't fall in love at first sight, because you know what? Falling in love at first sight, not really that good a plan.
Doesn't really work out very well for that one. Yeah.
I kind of feel like that's the entire thesis of the book, that she just, like, tucked into this little paragraph right in the middle of Elizabeth's distress, and it's really easy to miss, but it's kind of like the entire point of Pride and Prejudice.
Mm-hmm. Oh, goodness. And now I think we have to talk about Mrs. Bennet.
Oh my God. Do we? Do we have to?
I think we should. I think because, oh my gosh, she lives in her own mercurial world. Like,
yes.
when Mr. to find her daughter, like, she's all like, send him to come back. I don't want him to get invited. I don't want him to, like, have a duel, and then, like, we're all going to be widowed and have to move out of this house. Which, like, you know that's her concern, is that, like, they're going to have to move out of the house if he dies.
Right, because Charlotte would totally kick them out of the house. That's a thing Charlotte would do.
Yeah. Mr.
Like, okay,
might,
stop. Who's in charge of this? Yeah, but who's in charge of this marriage? It's not Mr. Collins.
Right. He would notice that his wife is unhappy, and he'd be like, what is making you so unhappy? And she's like, I just don't feel right about this, whatever. And
right. I mean, he's going to be like, well, you know, yeah. They'll kick them out of the house. He'll be like, well, we'll kick them out of the house and we'll move in. And Charlotte will be like, that is a very good plan, and you are very wise. But I think we must also consider the nature of Christian charity in regards to widows and orphans.
Yeah.
And they'll just be like, despite the fact that I just said that's a very smart idea, I'm going to make you do the opposite.
Yeah. And then, but then as soon as he comes home, Mrs. Bennet is like, why are you back? You didn't find her. What are you doing back here?
Yes.
Like, she hadn't just been like, send him home. Like, she doesn't even remember what she said, like, 2 days before. Because however she's feeling now is the only way that she's ever felt in her life.
Yes. And
It's
it's
so
just.
obnoxious.
And then they get the letter that says Wickham will marry Lydia for this much. And Mrs. Bennet is like, oh, she's getting married. I'm so excited. I have a daughter who's getting. It's like, no, woman, no, this is not an honor. This is not. This is a settle.
This is damage control.
Yes.
This is not. This is not. This be happy for the perfect wedding. It's already not the perfect wedding. No one will ever see it as such.
Right.
Ugh. Yeah. And then I also like how. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm trying to find where they said he will, he'll marry Lydia for this much. And Mr. Bennet is like, if he takes anything less than 10,000, he's a moron. And I would hate to think of my very first son-in-law as being a moron.
Yeah. And it's like only £100 a year. Like that's a joke.
Right.
Oh, and then Mr. Bennet is like, I just love Mr. Bennet. like like Elizabeth tries to console him, and he's like, no, let me once in my life feel how much I have been to blame. He's like, look, I haven't been there raising you guys very well. Like this is on me a lot. A lot of this is on me.
Right.
Let me just
And he's like,
feel that.
right, it will pass soon enough.
And then later he says, I bear you no ill will for being justified in your advice to me last May, which, considering the events, shows some greatness of mind. Or
Yes.
like she told him, like, you probably shouldn't let Lydia just go off on her own.
Right. He's specific. He's like, we will never get anything less harmful than this scenario.
Right. And that was, I feel like maybe you got something more harmful. Like you could have had less harmful than what you got.
And then he turns to Kitty and he's like, no officer is ever to enter into my house again, nor pass through the village. Balls are absolutely prohibited unless you stand up with one of your sisters, and you are never to stir out of doors till you can prove that you have spent 10 minutes of every day in a rational manner. And like, okay, you can't enforce that. You can stop an officer coming into your house. You can't stop them coming into your village. So he can't be that serious.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it really says something about this family that Kitty's like, 10 minutes in a rational manner. Oh my God, I can't do it. You're condemning me to house arrest. I can't spend 10 minutes of every day in a rational manner.
Yeah. It's like, just read a book or something.
Honestly, if you would just sit for 10 minutes, don't talk, don't do anything, just sit for 10 minutes, that would qualify.
Yeah. It really would not be that bad, but yeah, he does kind of take it out on Kitty there.
Yeah. Well, and he said so. Kitty, I have at last learned to be cautious, and you will feel the effects of it.
And I also really love, like, knowing where the resolution comes from. That they're all like, oh my gosh, how are we ever going to pay our uncle back? And it's like, oh gosh, you guys.
Right. I know a saying.
This is not from your uncle.
On the subject of doing charity and making sure no one knows about it.
Right. And then Jane is just so obnoxiously optimistic about the whole thing afterwards. We must endeavor to forget all that has passed on either side. I hope and trust they will yet be happy.
Right.
And then Elizabeth, who's like the sane one, says their conduct has been such as neither you nor I nor anybody can ever forget. It is useless to talk of this.
Right. I also highlighted the talking about keeping Mrs. Bennet away from everyone. For she had not prudence enough to hold her tongue before the servants while they waited at table, and judged it better that one only of the household, and the one whom they could most trust, should comprehend all her fears and solicitude on the subject. And I'm like, guys, I guarantee they are talking about this constantly. Like, if you think that the servants aren't aware of what's going on, you are crazy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. But I think it's amusing that they did try to keep their mom away from the other servants to
Right.
avoid increased intrigue. Oh, and then after she finds out that that she thinks everyone thinks Mr. Gardner's like giving Lydia and Wickham all this money, she's like, well, he had not had a family of his own, and I and my children mustn't have all of his money, you know. And it's the first time we've ever had anything from him except a few presents. And she's like, it's like she's trying to justify laying claim to his money because, oh, well, if he'd never had a family, it would have gone to us anyway. So whatever, it's fine.
Right? Oh,
man. It's like, good grief, that's not how these things work. Like, maybe
she
that
does
statement is true,
have no
but
ability. But he does have a family, and
right.
in all likelihood would have a family. So
right, so like there was never even any reason for her to think that she had any kind of claim to his money, because it was very likely he was going to have a family regardless. It's not like he suddenly got married out of the blue unexpectedly, and everyone was like, "Oh gosh, there's no way he's going to get married."
Right, or that his wife was barren for like the first 10 years of their marriage, and then all of a sudden a kid.
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Money. These guys had a lot, like just a crap ton of money back then, didn't they?
Yes.
Because they're like £5,000 was settled by marriage articles on Mrs. Bennet and the children. And like so they've got like £5,000 just set aside for the kids or whatever. But then like, how much? Oh, that was in chapter 50. So where was it that they were talking about the actual money? Like he had to give them. It was 100 a year, but then the lump sum up front was larger. Let's see.
Yeah, so it was basically 100 a year while he lives and 50 a year
after he dies.
Yeah. Because you can assume
her
a
equal
10%.
share of the £5,000. So her equal share of the £5,000, like right away, which I guess was set aside like for them to get married or something.
So there it is. So when you speak of, for whatever reason, when you speak of a man's income, here we go. You are talking about his annual income. And so when Darcy has 10,000 a year, that's the equivalent in 2008 pounds of £339,000. £200 a year, or about $600,000. But a woman's, when you speak of a woman's having money, then that is the principal off of which the income is generated. And so it's the actual income off of that is like, I want to say 10% of that.
Okay.
4%.
Okay.
Okay, as long as Mr. Bennet lived, his family was comfortably off, but the situation would change drastically the moment he died. After that unhappy event, Mrs. Bennet would be expected to live off the 4% interest of her £5,000 marriage settlement, or £200 per year.
Okay.
After Mrs. Bennet's death, Lizzie would receive 1/5 of her mother's marriage portion, and would bring to her marriage £40 per year.
Right.
And so Lydia gets that same 1/5.
Okay.
But for comparison, average annual income from an English laborer or farmer in the 1800s was around 15 to 20 pounds.
Right, and to have just 5,000 set aside, it's like 2 orders of magnitude more than the average annual income. Like, that's
right.
insane to me. That'd be like,
and the trick is getting the 4% is the amount that you can get off of, you can generate off of it without depleting your principal. And so the 4% number you can run year after year after year, and you're fine. Mm-hmm. That money will always be there, and you can pass it on to your kids. What's right. actually going to happen is Lydia will get her £1,000, and she and Wickham will spend it over the course of maybe 5 years. Right? They'll make bad decisions. They'll be like, oh, it's not that big a deal if we live off 5% or 10%. Yeah, we're pulling from the principal, but it's fine. And then in 5 or 10 years, they'll be completely broke again.
Right. What they really should do is like try to earn money and save up to build up the principal so they can live off of that.
Which is kind of the theme of chapter 50.
Chapter 50, you said?
Yeah. Mr. Bennet had very often wished before this period of his life that, instead of spending his whole income, he had laid by an annual sum for the better provision of his children and of his wife if she survived him.
Yeah. Okay. I think we should probably end this soon because my Hangouts is not happy and things are like stuttering, and I've been mostly looking at a black screen.
Oh, fun times. Yeah, well, and we've reached chapter 50, so it must be time to stop.
Cool.
So cool. We'll keep in contact about what to talk about next time.
Yep. Will do.
Cool.
Talk to you later.
Have a good one.
Your stairs and stuff?
Mm-hmm.